Hi everyone, this is Mehul Mehta and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So, a lot of students have reached out to me asking what are the recent H1B changes and how does that impact international students or students who are planning to pursue a master's in financial engineering or master's in quantitative finance in United States. So that's why I'm creating this video. I'll talk about everything. If you are someone who's planning to come next year, this video will be very important for you. So just to make things easier, I'll showcase my iPad so that all of you are able to understand and visualize what's happening. Okay, so I'll give you a little idea of what is the announcement. So recently, President Donald Trump announced that $100,000. Okay, so $100,000 would be charged for. So if let's say if $100,000 would be charged for new H1B application or new H1B petition. Okay, so this is what the new order states. Okay, so this is what the new order states. Now, how would this affect you? Or if let's say if you're coming to the United States for pursuing a master's in financial engineering, master's in quant finance, or any other masters, how would this affect you? I'll tell you. So what happens is when you come to the US, you will come on student visa. Okay, so the student visa is nothing but it is called the F1 visa. Okay, this is called F1. Okay, so this is called F1 visa, right? F1. So you come to the US on F1 visa. So on F1 visa, you can stay in the US. So let's say I'll give you a simple example. So let's say you came on F1 visa after graduation. Okay. So after graduation, you can stay in the US for 3 more years. Okay, let's say you graduated in 2024 May. Okay, which means after your graduation you can stay in the US till 2027 May. Okay, and you can still be on student visa. So this student visa gives you the right to stay in the US for 3 years. Okay, given that you should have a job. Okay, given that you should have a job. Okay, so this is what the earlier rule was. Okay, so what used to happen was, so you might be thinking, okay, so let's say this is year 1, year 2, and year 3. So you can stay in the US up till 3 year, right? And after this point, you need H1B visa. So after this point, you can no longer stay on the in the US on student visa. You need certain other visa, which is nothing but your H1B visa. Okay, now changes on the H1B visa has been made. We'll talk about the changes, but I'll give you an understanding. Okay, so just to make it clarify, this first 3 years after you graduate, you can stay in the US on student visa and work. So you can stay on the student visa and work here. But after the third year, if you want to stay for another few years, you need H1B visa. Okay, I hope this is clear. So after this point, you need H1B visa. But then what used to happen is, because H1B is a lottery based visa. Okay, this H1B visa is what is a law you it used to be, or it is a lottery based visa. Okay, so what used to happen was company used to file every year. So year 1, year 2, year 3. Okay, every year company will be filing H1B for you. So, okay, so let's say every year, because this thing, is, I know, I'm going at very basic because a lot of students do not know this. That's why I'm telling you. Okay, so every year company will be filing H1B, company will be filing H1B visa for you. Okay. So let's say if let's come back to our timeline. So year 1, year 2, and year 3. This is year 4. So up till here you can stay on student visa, right? After this you need H1B visa. Up till for after graduate. So let's say at this point you graduated. Okay, at this point you graduated. So first 3 years you can stay on student visa, and after that you need H1B. So what used to happen was, these every year company will be filing H1B for you. Okay, so let's say if let's say H1B gets picked, Okay, let's say your your H1B does not get picked in all the 3 years. Okay, so let's say H1B does not get picked. It does not get picked in all the 3 years. What you have to do, you would have to leave US simply, because after this point you don't have any. So H1B did not get picked, so now you cannot stay in the US, so you need to leave the US. Okay, you need to leave the US if your H1B is not picked. But let's say your H1B is picked. Let's say if this gets picked, then you can stay in the US. So let's say in your year 2, let's say year 1, year 2, year 3, let's say at here your H1B got picked. Okay, so from this point you can stay here for 3 years plus 3 years, so you can stay in the US for 6 more years. Okay, let's say if your so let's say year 1, if your H1B got selected in the very first year, so from this point you can stay in the US for 6 more years. And similarly, if this was the earlier system, okay, so let's say, so if your H1B got picked in the third year, right, you can stay in the US. From this point you can stay in the US for 6 more years, okay, which is 3 plus 3. So which is 3 plus 3. So what used to happen is 3 years you will get, first you will get visa for 3 years, then you need to extend your H1B so you can stay in the US for another 3 years, okay? So 6 years. Now what is happening is, now what what the recent announcement states is, because as I said, company used to file, this H1B every year. So now if they have to file, it will take $100,000. So if the company has to file, it will take $100,000. But and I'll tell you, no company will file it because $100,000 is a lot of money first. So so now what will happen is, so let's say, so if the company would not file it, let's say if does not file, assuming if company does not file your H1B, what will happen? No H1B, right? Of course, if they're not filing, which means no H1B, which means you can only stay in the US for just 3 years. After you graduate, you can stay in the US. So this is the overall thing. Okay, now I'll come back. So this means you can stay in the US for just 3 years. So now if this rule applies to you, which means, because this is still not clear if the rule applies to a student visa or not. But if let's say if the rule applies to student visa, which means anyone pursuing a master's, let's say any international student pursuing a master's in the US, if the rule applies to them, this means that you can stay in the US for just 3 years. Just 3 years. See, why most of the students used to come? Why? Because they can stay in the US for longer time. Because see, we all take loans, right? All of us take loans. So initial 2 years just go into paying back the loan. So just staying more for one more year, I feel if you're coming from a middle class family and then money is something that, I mean, it's really a crunch, I might not recommend you. But because you know that initial 2 years you will be just paying back the loan, and the last year you can save the money. And also one more thing is, lot of time international students also do not get the job. So it's not just like that you'll get the job for complete 3 years. It can happen that 6 months you do not get job, and you get a job for only 2.5 years, right? So anything can happen. So now what would be my suggestion? Okay, so here is my suggestion. Still, it is not clear whether this rule applies to F1 students or not. I have paid $150 to the lawyer just to understand whether the rule applies to the student, and the lawyer said it's still in the gray area. Okay, and yes, $150 just for 30 minutes, that's what they charge in the US. It's pretty heavy, but I wanted to do for my audience, right? So they said that even lawyers are not clear, because it is not clear whether the rule applies to F1 or not. So if let's say the rule applies to F1, which means the company would not be filing H1B, because even if they file, that would cost $100,000. And believe me, they would prefer training someone with $100,000 as compared to just putting your application for $100,000. So I don't think so that would have that would really happen, that companies would be filing. But let's say if it does not apply, right? I mean, if companies would not be filing, you guys would have just 3 years to stay in the US. Now it's up to you whether you want to still come to the US, gain experience, go back, or whether you go to a different country altogether. There are so many countries in Europe that you can target which has very similar work life balance, good standard of living. Yeah, salaries might not be as much as what we get in the US, but definitely far better than what you wherever you, whichever country you belong from, right? So I would suggest few things. One is look out, because this is still not clear. So first is still think that still make sure give your GRE and TOEFL, okay, with the same dedication, because it should not happen that you all just thought, okay, you scrap this, and then later you realize, oh, this rule is not been applied to F1. So this should not happen. So first is give your GRE and TOEFL religiously. Second is a lot of applicants will drop if in case this rule applies. So that also means that a lot, like very few candidates would be coming to the US, which also means that you have a chance of getting into all those top notch universities, right? So if your aim is to get into a good school, your chances becomes more higher, right? So why? Because most of the students are not even applying. I spoke to so many students, and they are actually dropping the plan. Yes, they are just dropping in the plan of coming to the US. So, but again, as I said, this is still not clear whether this rule applies to F1 students or not. So, still, I would suggest make sure you give your GRE TOEFL, keep applying. I mean, have 10 universities segregated and then apply to those universities by November or December. And then also have a backup, apply to universities in Germany, apply to universities in Europe. I actually created a pretty big spreadsheet of which what all alternate universities and program you can consider, which contains both programs which are very expensive and programs which are cheap. So if you want that a new video, like if you want me to create that video, just let me know and I'll be happy to create that. But I hope one thing which I think is um, on the job thing, right? A lot of students are curious about jobs. Let's say if the rule applies and still you decide to take that risk and come to the US, whether will you get the job or not? I can assure, if the rule applies and then if the rule applies and then you take that risk, chances are that you would get the job. It's very high chances that you would get the job, because what would happen is supply is less and demand is more, right? Cons demand is pretty high, but not many people would be coming in for their masters, which means not many people would be graduating, right? A low number of people graduating means you would definitely get the job. But again, as I said, it's very personal decision. I would then what I would have done, to be honest, is I would have still come to the US. If I was in this situation, I would have still come to the US, because of course US is the best, right? I mean, it's best in education, at least for quant finance. I would have still come to the US, but then I would have preferred low budget universities. Okay, I would have not gone to universities which are charging $100,000 or $80,000. I would have been going to the universities which are charging $40,000. I know it's very few universities have the quant finance degree with $40,000 of education. I guess there's, yeah, hardly there are universities, but I would personally have done that. Again, as I said, everyone has a different mindset, different education, different financial background. So I would suggest that religiously apply to the US. You never know what the rule becomes, right? And also have an alternative. I wish I was able to help you in some ways. If you have any questions, please drop it in the comment box, and I would do my level best to answer you within a day. All the best.